tonight's news edition. His Majesty sends a letter to the Prime Minister asking him to convey his appreciation to those who responded to the deadly road accident involving 50 Palestinians on the Dead Sea Road yesterday. Cypriots are stunned at a decision by Eurozone finance ministers asking savers to forfeit about 10% of their bank deposits in return for a €10 billion bailout. And 150,000 people from across Italy and the world attend Pope Francis's first Sunday prayer and address at St. Peter's Square, in which he asks the world to be more forgiving. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. His Majesty the King voiced appreciation for the efforts of the Health Ministry as well as the Civil Defense and Public Security personnel that responded to Palestinians involved in a road accident yesterday on the Dead Sea Road. 17 people were killed, including a Jordanian trail driver, and 38 were injured when a bus carrying Palestinian pilgrims returning from Umrah in Saudi Arabia got involved in the tragic accident. In a letter to the Prime Minister, the King asked that his deep thanks and appreciation be conveyed to respondents for their efficient efforts, saying they all rushed to perform their duty to their Palestinian brothers and sisters with utmost professionalism. His Majesty the King received a telephone call from Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas thanking Jordanian personnel for their handling of the Palestinian passengers involved in the road accident yesterday. Abbas also thanked the King for directing the competent authorities to provide the best medical care to the injured. Abbas later traveled to Jordan and called on the injured Palestinians receiving medical attention at Al Hussein Government Hospital in Salt. Speaking to reporters at the hospital, Abbas hailed Jordan's continued stand with the Palestinians.
There is no doubt it was a tough and painful day. We are sorry for the loss of lives. May God bless their souls, those who have just returned from pilgrimage. We wish those injured a speedy recovery to return to their families. Our deep gratitude and respect go to His Majesty the King and to all the officials and physicians who exerted big efforts. After all, this is what is expected of Jordan and our brothers.
Meanwhile, Civil Defense Department crews transferred the remains of the victims of the road accident from Al-Bashir Government Hospital in Amman to the King Hussein Bridge en route to their homeland. Palestinian officials were on hand to receive the coffins. A number of injured pilgrims remain in hospital for further treatment. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour met with independent deputies as part of his consultations with members of the lower house to form a parliamentary government. Today's meeting marks the culmination of his dialogue with parliamentary blocs and independents before naming his cabinet members, whom he said will include a substantial number of deputies. Again, the Prime Minister laid out the future path of his government, saying there will be an effective work partnership and close cooperation between the government and the House as envisioned by His Majesty the King. He said there are also high expectations from the current House to make a strong political presence in the coming phase of Jordan's democracy. Mansour said his consultations with House blocs and members were genuine and serious, aimed at drawing up the outline of the next government that will lead the way for future successful parliamentary governments. President of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD, Suma Chakrabarti, met with the Prime Minister to discuss cooperation between Jordan and the bank, which officially launched its operation in the kingdom last month. Mansour hailed the important move of setting up a branch in Jordan to manage local operations and boost cooperation between the two sides. The meeting also dealt with major economic challenges facing Jordan, mainly the extra burdens resulting from hosting hundreds of thousands of Syrian refugees in the kingdom. President of the bank said the Amman branch will contribute to supporting priority projects that could help reduce youth unemployment. The lower house of parliament convened a session today during which members referred the 2013 draft Consumers Protection Law to the legal committee. The draft law stirred a wide debate among lawmakers, as some said it does nothing to protect consumers and asked the government to draft another law, while others praised it as a step forward. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour defended the draft bill as a key reform and said it will be one of the House's major accomplishments. He said the government will be receptive to any comment by the legal committee after its revision of the draft. Foreign Minister Nasser Joudeh met with members of the Parliamentary Arab and International Committee. The discussion focused on Jordan's position vis-à-vis latest developments in the region, as well as the economic repercussions of the continued influx of Syrian refugees to the kingdom. He also highlighted his ministry's efforts to ensure the release of Jordanian detainees abroad. To the Syrian civil war, rebel fighters have seized a Syrian military intelligence compound near the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. Rebel commanders said the compound in the town of Shagara fell after a 5-day siege. And in other developments in central Syria, around 20 soldiers fled their posts for embattled rebel territories near the ancient desert city of Palmyra, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. A study for the International Institute for Strategic Studies, published this week, estimated that Syrian government forces are now at a much lower effective strength than at the start of the uprising 2 years ago. Many deserters report that their units were held inside bases to prevent their escape. And there was another defection reported as senior military official Brigadier General Mohammed Khalouf appeared on video announcing he has defected from the Syrian army. Elsewhere in Hims and Damascus, unofficial videos showed ongoing shelling and an almost total destruction of suburbs in the two cities. Over to Iraq, 9 people were killed when a car bomb exploded at a bus terminal in a suburb of the southern city of Basra. 2 people were injured in another car bomb explosion, which took place at the car park of a government office compound. No one claimed responsibility for the attack. Iraq's power-sharing government has been all but paralyzed since U.S. troops left more than a year ago. Iraqi Prime Minister Noor al-Maliki is facing protests in the country's Sunni heartland, which shares a porous border with Syria. A second round of talks on Iran's nuclear program opened in Istanbul with the participation of negotiators from Iran and counterparts from the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council plus Germany. The closed-door meeting aimed to discuss concessive measures with Turkey, expressed an interest in seeing a solution that would be best for Iran. Beryl Dedit-Uglu, director of the School of International Relations at Galatasaray University, said she is skeptical about progress in the talks, but that the talks themselves represent progress in one way or another.
If both sides say no to further dialogue, that means they would take actions rather than words. And by action, I mean more tensions would appear. Turkey is not willing to see Iran isolated by the international community, and we are more willing to stand by the Iranian side on the balance point between the East and the West.
Over to Cyprus, and in a radical departure from previous aid packages, Eurozone finance ministers want Cypriots to forfeit about 10% of their bank deposits in return for a €10 billion bailout. The decision announced yesterday stunned Cypriots and caused a run to cash points, most of which were depleted within hours. A meeting of Parliament scheduled for today was postponed for a day to give more time for consultations and a broker deal. We get more in this Reuters report.
Cash point machines in Nicosia are empty after Cypriots took out money from their banks on news of a proposed 10% tax on savings. The embattled government on Sunday postponed until Monday an emergency session to vote on the proposed bank levy that could see savings of over €100,000 hit with the 10% tax. Deposits less than €100,000 would be subject to a tax of almost 7%. The proposed tax hikes are part of efforts to generate €6 billion to help bail out the country's two biggest banks hit hard by the Eurozone debt crisis.
I feel like everyone else, annoyed and angry at the situation we are facing. We have no idea what we will face tomorrow. The situation is very difficult.
Not good because anyway when you get the money, already you have taxes.
The radical levy would break a previous Eurozone taboo on penalizing struggling banks' depositors.
An estimated 150,000 people attended Pope Francis's first Sunday service and address at St. Peter's Square today. Speaking from the window of the papal apartments overlooking the square, the Pope thanked the crowds who came from across Italy and other parts of the world for their welcome and for their prayers. He urged the world to be more forgiving and merciful and not so quick to condemn other people's failures. Again, he explained why he had chosen the name of Francis after Saint Francis of Assisi, a symbol of peace, austerity, and poverty. Pope Francis was elected on Wednesday as the first non-European pope in nearly 1,300 years. He earlier said Mass for a few hundred Vatican workers in a tiny church just inside the city-state walls. Though St. Patrick's Day is synonymous with Ireland, celebrations are taking place all over the world. Cities in the USA, Europe, and Asia went green for the special day in a variety of parades and festivities full of shamrocks and leprechaun hats. Zain Abu Sufa has more on some of the highlights of the day.
St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland who contributed most to converting Ireland to Christianity, is annually honored all over the globe. And in the heart of New York, tens of thousands of revelers appeared decked in green for the city's 252nd annual St. Patrick's Day parade. Wearing everything green, from tall hats to shamrock glasses, the crowd cheered and applauded the marchers as they made their way uptown. Snowfall didn't dampen the spirit of crowds as bagpipers, marching bands, and dancers made their way up the 42-block route. Creatively, Chicago continued its 51st year tradition when it dyed its river green in observance of the day. The gloomy and cold weather also couldn't stop thousands of revelers dressed in green from watching the festivities from bridges. South of London, at the Aldershot Barracks, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge took part in traditional celebrations with Irish Guards. Prince William, Colonel of the Irish Guards, was dressed in traditional regalia, along with the mother-to-be Duchess, wearing a gold shamrock brooch, worn previously by the Queen Mother. Eyes were on Kate as she presented members of the 1st Battalion Irish Guards with sprigs of shamrock in a tradition dating back to 1901, started by Queen Alexandria. She also honored the regimental mascot, an Irish wolfhound, by pinning a shamrock on its collar. But moments after, Kate laughed off a mishap as the heel of her shoe appeared to be stuck in a metal grate. Grasping her husband's hand with a smile on his face, she swiftly bent down to pull the heel from the grate, stood back up, and grinned, shaking the sticky situation away. Zain Abu Sufa, News at 10.
The slopes of Georgia gave conventional skiing a new twist. Skiers in costume raced down the snow-covered hills to end their run with a splash in a cold pool of water. The Red Bull Jump and Freeze contest drew 24 ski and snowboard teams, as well as a jury seated in their own costumes at the side of the hill. Participants were required to present a short, humorous show related to their team name and choice of attire while descending the slope and diving into the icy water. All participants received prizes regardless of whether they won or not. One of the highlight moments was called the Tragic Wedding, which consisted of a man and woman dressed as a bride and groom. Novak Djokovic made a shock exit at the BNP Paribas Open semifinals as his winning streak of 22 matches came to an end. The top-seeded Serb squandered a 3-love lead in the final set before losing concentration and the match to Argentina's Juan Martín del Potro 4-6, 6-4, 6-4. Djokovic was broken twice in the third set as Del Potro booked his place in Sunday's final against world number 5 Rafael Nadal. Earlier, twice champion Rafael Nadal made light of his 7 months out last year due to a knee injury as he outplayed the 6-seeded Czech Thomas Berdych 6-4, 7-5. Twice Indian Wells champion Nadal, who has beaten Del Potro 7 times in their 10 career meetings, including the last 3 matches, played down any suggestions he would be a firm favorite in Sunday's final. And finally, for a quick look at the weather, cold and partly cloudy weather prevails tonight with a continued chance for light showers in the northern and central regions. A slight rise in temperature is expected tomorrow with northwesterly moderate winds changing to northeasterly at night. The Gulf of Aqaba should be moderate and partly cloudy tomorrow with northerly moderate to fresh winds and slightly choppy seas. The weatherman warns of poor visibility in hilly areas after midnight and in the early morning hours due to fog. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To end the news, here's a reminder of our top stories. His Majesty sends a letter to the Prime Minister asking him to convey his appreciation to those who responded to the deadly road accident involving 50 Palestinians on the Dead Sea Road yesterday. Cypriots are stunned at a decision by Eurozone finance ministers asking savers to forfeit about 10% of their bank deposits in return for a €10 billion bailout. And 150,000 people from across Italy and the world attend Pope Francis's first Sunday prayer and address at St. Peter's Square, in which he asked the world to be more forgiving. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Nancy Khair. Thank you for watching and have a good night.